Good morning, everybody. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so hello, everybody. I am going to create a bit of a whistle-stop tour here. I've got 20 minutes to share with you insights onto CV writing, into CV writing. So I'm going to share with you just some key elements that I want you to know. We're going to cover three areas. First of all, how to use the information in a job ad to create a targeted application. And the importance of that. Secondly, know what makes a strong application. So really, this is about what you'll put into your CV or application that is high value. And largely, the last bit is going to be around the what a structure of a CV is, some top tips in that area. Although that last part, I'd say you can find online a little bit more easily than other areas. So let's start with preparation and understanding the employer. I think this is exceptionally important because you can create a functional CV, which will do just fine for the most part. But if you want to stand out from the crowd and if you want to be competitive, you really need to make sure that application speaks to that person and they feel like you really want to be there and that you are producing well, that you are of the high enough standard to be there, and especially when there's competition for roles. And that's particularly important because speaking from the employer's perspective, you get a lot of generic applications, a lot of generic CVs. And the ones that stand out are the ones that look like they've been thoughtful around tailoring the application to the employer. And really, the purpose of your application and your CV is to get you an interview. It's got to pique their curiosity. It's got to seem like it's strong enough so that they choose you over someone else for an interview. And an interview, which we'll talk about later on, that's where you really get to show yourself off in the best possible way. So the thing that I tend to do is I start with the job application. So the job ad, or so not application, the job advert. And the reason I'm focusing on this for you here is because this is often overlooked. People read through these things, they go, okay, great, I want to work here, and they go into a more traditional attempt of matching themselves to the job. But there are a whole bunch of clues inside a job ad, as we have here. So what I'm going to show you is how I've looked at this. Is a real ad that's live at the moment. So I went and hunted one down. I picked out a few key phrases from that application, and I wanted to show you how I would look at this application and what it would, or sorry, advert, and what it would tell me about what I would do in my application. So what I've done here is I've highlighted a few key elements that essentially are the ones that I've picked up on here. So I'm going to, without reading the whole thing to you, I'm just going to share those elements. So firstly, in the yellow, we're talking here about cover for more than 615,000 people across 2,000 square miles in Devon, extending their reach as far as Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So first thing that I'm picking up on is the size of the population and what and I'm going to try and make some judgments as to what that means about what the kind of person they're looking for. And certainly they may be looking for people who have got flexibility to travel, perhaps. This is something that they're promoting about themselves and may have an impact on you as you work. So if I felt that was really important, I would be highlighting to them my flexibility in terms of willingness to travel. The second elements that I've highlighted are in green, and actually this was the biggest one for me. They talk about alongside our two acute hospitals, we provide integrated health and social care services across a variety of settings. Further down, it says the successful applicant will work as an integral part of the team. It also says the post holder will be expected to work as part of a team. And then finally, I've got the medical staff work closely with specialist nurses, speech and language therapists, dietitians, and audiologists. So for me, highlighting my ability to work as part of a team and to work collaboratively is going to be essential. I love it when I see repeats in a job ad, because this is usually a dead giveaway as to what their highest priorities are. And sometimes things that they wouldn't necessarily declare in a description of the qualities of a person, they might give you hints as to what some of the challenges they're experiencing. So combined with the size of the population, this sense of collaboration, I'm going to be making sure that is very prevalent in my CV. And we'll look at some ways we can do that very shortly. In pink here, I've got our state-of-the-art equipment, leading technologies, and strong links to local universities put us at the forefront of research and innovations, enabling us to provide world-class care to our local communities. And the last part there says the ENT department is well established and highly regarded. So excellence is clearly an important value for them. And once again, I'm going to be promoting how I am somebody who strives for excellence in the work that I do. And the last one I picked up on here, and just because little interesting phrases like this might be a clue. So an enthusiastic and motivated junior doctor is something they've put here. So perhaps that means they just need somebody who is a bit more self-starting, somebody who is really wants to engage with them. And therefore, once again, I'm going to be I want to show them how I am somebody who's proactive, enthusiastic in my work, because clearly that's important enough that something that we wouldn't necessarily always see in a job advert has been highlighted by them. So that's how I look at the job ad to start with. And you can actually do this throughout the job description as well. But I think this is crucial, because the more you understand them, the better you are able to tailor your application to their specific needs. You might realize that means that for every application you ever make, this will mean that you're probably making lots of different versions of your CV, but this is the best practice if you want to be successful. And incidentally, I should say, these principles that I'm sharing with you, they apply not just for medical jobs, jobs outside of medicine, and for the rest of your career. I have this discussion with people when I'm coaching them for consultant interviews, where it's almost like this becomes more and more and more important over the course of your career, showing them that you're fully committed. Okay, let's look at the next area. Okay. This is values. So this is the second of 3 bits of preparation. So I've shown you the first bit, understand them. Now you can do that in a lot more depth than just the advert. You can meet with people who work there as well. Now this area of values, these are the declared values of the places you're looking to work for. And the reason I mention this is that this is something that's considered to be very important for the senior leadership teams. They are looking to employ people who are like them, who believe in the same kinds of principles as they do. And every trust is a little bit different. Every type of employer is a little bit different. So I would recommend very strongly that you take the time to understand what their published values are. Now, I'm using UCLH here because they're one of the employers that I've come across that are exceptionally high on values, to the extent where, and I will show you this in a minute, to the extent where it's actually in their job descriptions. So they include the values in there. They're saying to you loud and clear, if you do not share the values that we share and understand what that means in terms of your actions, then you're not our kind of person, and vice versa. If you do understand these things, if you can show us that you can behave in these ways and these are high priorities for you, then you are our kind of person. And I see this overlooked massively by people who are applying to roles, and yet on the other side, I'm seeing this as being one of their highest priorities. So this is how they find out whether you are somebody that's going to fit in, is they look at their values. So just the 4 simple principles for UCLH are safety, kindness, teamwork, and improving. These are written on walls in UCLH, for example. So I can't stress how important this is to employers. And this is I just grabbed part of something that they put in a more recent job description, but they even go further than this. So they actually go so far as to start to describe and put words around what those values mean to them. And this is a great guide for you to how you promote yourself to this particular employer. So, for example, here, kindness, showing that this is a high value for you. I would even go so far as to include it in my CV as a shared value. I'd probably create a value section, even though that's unusual. I would show them, you value these things, let me show you how I deliver these things. And that's why my CV would jump out of a pile of CVs compared to anyone else's, because they would see their values being reflected back to them deliberately in a CV. Okay, so that's the second big bit of preparation that I'd recommend to you. And I think the one other reason that I would recommend you thinking about this is because from an employer's perspective, one thing they want is people who are going to be committed to what they're doing and are going to stick around. So what that means for them is if they can see their values being reflected in any application, also in the interview, that usually is a very strong signal this is somebody who's going to stick around and will enjoy working in this location. Okay, so that's two of the three things. And the last bit of prep that I wanted to talk to you about is also the heart of what makes a strong application. And these are your skills and your competencies. Now, outside of your clinical knowledge and clinical capabilities, this is your primary currency to your employers. Those of you who are looking to apply to foundation, for example, will know that teamwork and leadership are explicitly part of that application form. It's all well and good being an exceptional clinician, but for example, if you can't cope under pressure, if you cannot make decisions, if your communication skills are poor, you're going to struggle in the work, and therefore I need to test those alongside your clinical skills. So you need to be aware of what they are, and I'm going to talk to you very importantly here about how you communicate those. And I'm going to ask for your input in just a moment. So the key message here is when you want to share with an employer that you are good in any one of these areas, the way you do that is you evidence it with examples of where you have lived these in real life, rather than, and this is the common tendency, rather than to talk generically about why leadership is important or what you believe is high value communication in a medical role. So you can show understanding, but actually living it is a completely different thing. And so you are going to be wanting to look for specific examples of when you have engaged and lived these kinds of competencies. And so you'll notice there's one obvious one that's missing from this list, and that's teamwork. And what I wanted to do is give you a simple way in which you can generate these for yourself and understand how to find those examples. So what I'd like you to do is in the chat box, I just want you to put some examples of what you see when you see people delivering exceptional teamwork. So however that looks for you personally, I've got some suggestions on the next slide, but put it in the chat box. When you think of really good teamwork, when you think of people that you've seen that you admire for how good they are at teamwork, what do you see them doing? So just pop some examples in the chat box to share with everyone. So in the Zoom chat box, as opposed to the Menti website, just some examples of what great teamwork looks like, so that we can just get an idea. Because what I'm leading you towards here is that when you understand what it looks like, and when you understand what good teamwork looks like, then you can look for your own examples. You don't have to try and think, well, what's my teamwork example? Think what it looks like, admire people, and then say, where do I do that? So just a few examples from you here is good communication, effective communication, good listeners, engaging with everyone in the group. Yes, that's really good. And in fact, not just engaging, I'd say bringing other people into the group. So people who may be not contributing or maybe a bit nervous to bringing them in, working towards a common goal. Yeah, absolutely. So showing that you understand that goal, setting smart goals for everyone, a bit of leadership, a bit of teamwork there. knows their role and has competence. That's a really good one. So the reason I like that one is I'll highlight in a moment is when you are doing a task solo that other people depend upon you for, then your ability to know what that is and deliver it competently is a high value team working. Well-defined roles and giving people well-defined roles, absolutely working on improvements. So here's my list. This is by no means exhaustive, but the idea here is when you see a list like this, when you create a list like this, you're able to say to yourself, well, where do I behave in this way? So listening to other people's ideas, asking for impact, giving support to other team members, demonstrating patience and tolerance of others when they do things differently or make mistakes. And this is my favorite one, because this can sometimes mean some people will say to me, oh, but I work a lot on my own and I don't know that I've got teamwork examples, but actually it's very rare in the workplace where your work doesn't connect in some way to somebody else's work. So if you are unreliable, even if you worked on your own, that's poor teamwork. And if you are highly reliable, even if you worked on your own, I'd argue that's great teamwork, because you recognize how other people depend upon you. And I'll pick one more from this list, which is keeping others informed of your progress. So the way to find your examples, and this is the bit that most people find challenging, is to think, where do I behave in that way? What stories do I have to tell? If your answer to anything around teamwork was just this kind of list, I'd say you've done half the job. So the fact that you understand what good teamwork is fantastic. Now show me that you are able to deliver great teamwork. And you do that through thinking of what examples do I have of good teamwork. And just a little bit of a note I'd add to this is, again, lots of people will then talk about what they did. And this is not just in interviews, this is on paper as well. Even if you've got a few sentences to share an example of where you've been a great team member, if you can show a positive outcome for that behavior, that's going to be your really exceptional level of example, because a lot of people forget and don't think in terms of, let's say, patience and tolerance of others and making mistakes. I was able to support others, and we were all then able to succeed in this project. So something to that effect shows that your tolerance demonstrated great teamwork, which had positive impact. So if you spend the most amount of time in any area, this is the area that I would recommend. So for the last few minutes that I've got with you here for this topic, I just want to give you a super quick whistle-stop tour of what a medical CV should look like. I'll try and give you the top tips rather than sort of talking you through the technicals of this, because there's lots of advice online on this. I'm going to try and give you the bits that people get wrong and the bits that enhance. So these are the sort of 14 areas that I would recommend that you include in your CV. And I'm just going to go through them one by one very quickly, give you the quick headlines. And once again, you can find this information online for the technical side of things, but I'm going to try and give you the insights. First of all, this is a template that you can download from the BMO website that will give you a basic structure. This is not a mandatory presentation, but the way I would think of it is, as long as you are meeting the basic needs of what this structure represents, then you'll be fine. A medical CV can be as long as it needs to be. So in the UK in particular, a traditional CV, bit of advice would be no more than 2 pages. Outside of medicine, that still holds true. Inside medicine, though, your CV can be as long as it needs to be. So personal details, fonts are important. I know this is going to seem like a weird comment to make, but a lot of people will pick up templates online that are old, and they might be in an Arial font or a Times New Roman font. Guaranteed, I can tell straight away that you've used an old template. My simple advice on this is use the default template, use the default font in Word. And that is Calibri at the moment, was once upon a time Arial, was once upon a time Times New Roman, so that's why you get these odd templates out there. Keep it to Calibri, and if you are feeling a bit brave, the one that seems to always catch my attention, because I think it looks so well on paper, is Avenir. So for those of you who are more interested. Okay, so key things here, keep it brief, contact details only, date of birth isn't necessary because they can't discriminate against you on grounds of age, although generally speaking, in terms of medical CVs, I haven't come across it, but generally speaking, I would probably not put it on there. And any other personal details that somebody might tell you should be there. A lot of these other things aren't relevant, and you do see them on CVs from time to time. So this is it, the basic details. Number two, probably one of the most important bits. So if you're going to spend any time on crafting something for your CV, this is probably the area I would recommend being one of two really important ones. This is the first thing they're going to read about you. So my advice here is really simple. Don't create an essay. And keep it bullet pointed. So these are actually real examples that I've anonymized, that I've seen on CVs. But the key messages I wanted to give you here are keep it relevant. So if the three, I recommend about 3 bullets are quite a good place to be as a recruiter. You just don't want to read essays at the start of a CV. So if there are 3 key messages you wanted me to know about you, this is the place to put it. You could I recommend bullet points, and I recommend using evidence if you can. So any outcomes that you've had will stand out stronger here if there's something you really want me to know. So generally speaking, if I was going to advise anybody in this area, I would say 3 bullets, 2 to 3 sentences per bullet, and I would try and focus them on 3 things that are relevant to the employer with outcomes, if that's possible. And so, for example, the one thing here that I would recommend that you avoid, which ironically is in the bullet pointed section, I'm a conscientious and hard-working doctor who pays attention to detail and has excellent interpersonal and time management skills. Those are just statements with no evidence. And what I've learned over the years is without evidence, you just can't take somebody's word for them being those things. Just saying you have excellent interpersonal skills doesn't make it true. But on the other hand, if you have consistently got examples of patients giving you positive feedback for your interpersonal skills, that is evidence, or any other form of feedback. Right, I'm going to get the pace up because this was really important. I want to spend a little bit of time on it. Career history, straightforward. Main thing you need to know here is reverse chronological order. For most of you, I hope that's really obvious, but surprisingly, I will still see CVs, medical and otherwise, where that isn't true. Straightforward here, nothing particularly controversial for me to say here, or top tips. Again, reverse chronological order is important. Here is the second big thing that I would recommend for you. This is simply to say, under each of your experiences, this is a good place for you to put some of the competencies that you have displayed in your work. I think it works very well here. You can talk about evidence of achievements and evidence of competencies under each of your working placements. Obviously, this one's quite far into the career, but for you, wherever you have the opportunity to put those competencies and put those achievements in, I would do it against where you've been working or where you've been studying. Personal development, courses that you've attended, etc. Nothing for me to add here. Again, keep it to reverse chronological order. Research and publications, once again, reverse chronological order. Nothing really more for me to say here. Pretty straightforward. There's some notes there on formatting. Audit and quality improvements. The message I'd give you here, this is where I've noticed a lot of people trip up, is they will talk about we and what the whole group did and not talk about what their contribution was. The second big area that people trip up on is they don't always put outcomes in there. And when I've asked people, particularly at more junior levels, what the outcomes were of the audits and quality improvement projects they're involved with, I'm genuinely surprised by how many people don't actually know what the outcome was, because maybe they moved rotation, maybe their contribution ended and it was only part of the project. But being able to talk about outcomes is really important here, and it's the bit that a lot of people miss. Teaching, again, whatever form you are involved in, formal or informal, I would add it here. Again, reverse chronological order, but nothing more for me to add there in terms of top tips. Management and leadership here, most importantly, I'm going to say to you here, this is the last of my big top tips. A lot of people think that they don't have management or leadership experience, and I'm going to put it to you in a very simple way. If you can think of people who look to you for direction, then you are leading. And even at a more junior level, there's going to be evidence you can add to this. And if you are able to show that level of thoughtfulness, then you are going to stand out from the crowd, because a lot of people, particularly at the junior levels, assume they are not in a management position and therefore have nothing to add here. But leadership, and particularly the way the NHS defines leadership, is for everyone. And I like to think of it as a simple way as who looks to you for direction. So one of the best tips I'm going to give you on leadership, and one of the most accessible resources you're going to find, if you go onto the NHS Leadership Academy, look for the healthcare leadership model. This is one of the best things I've read on leadership across the board, irrespective of medicine or not medicine. It uses very easy to understand examples of leadership in action, and you'll see how that leadership in action is more than just the kind of being in a management role, and therefore you will be likely able to pick up on areas that you have been leading in. Other skills and IT skills. So if there's anything else that you think will be relevant to your application, that's what I would put in there. Interests and references. Keep the interests relatively brief, but one thing, the reason a lot of people try and ignore the interest section, I think it's highly valuable, because interests show that you have got a good balance of work and life, and that can be very important to recruiters, because if you can show them that you have more going on than just your entire medical world, there's less chance that you are going to be a risk of burning out, for example. So I think actually it's a really nice addition to a CV. You don't have to go into great detail, but it does show that you're well balanced. And references, you can and generally speaking, there's nothing controversial for you in a medical CV to put references in there, but it's also not unusual for you to put unavailable upon request, because sometimes but basically medical CV doesn't really matter, but maybe there is a reason you wouldn't want them to contact somebody prior to you giving that person a heads up. So available upon request is pretty normal in a CV, medical and otherwise, but I don't think in a medical CV it generally matters too much. And that is pretty much my time up. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you. Good luck with CVs and applications you're putting together. I'll be back for the Q&A if you've got any more questions, if you've got any questions around CVs and applications, and I'll be back to give you some insights on how to be an exceptional interviewee. Okay, back to you, Ore.